Hello, everyone, and welcome to our June 16th All In for Kansas Kids biweekly webinar. We're happy that you're joining us today and hope that we can provide some valuable information for you to take away in your work. This week, we are very excited that it is Kansas Family Child Care Week. So we want to recognize and thank all of the family child care providers who are with us today, as well as any that might watch this webinar recording at a later time. Your dedication to caring for young children is appreciated and very respected. You juggle many balls in the air throughout the course of your work every day, and so providing a home away from home for the children in your care and peace of mind for the parents is priceless. We invite you to post why in the chat today. Why are you a family child care provider? Or for the rest of us, or those who might work in supportive roles for family providers, you can post why is this family child care important to early childhood in Kansas? We would love to see your responses as the meeting continues. Next slide. Okay, so today our meeting consists of the general updates, which we always share with you about what's going on. And then we also have a program that is presented by Megan Kluth and Sarah Gardner from KU Center for Public Partnership and Research on the Year 1 preschool development grants and subgrants. It's a recap of that. And so both of their faces will look very familiar to you as they are former webinar presenters. You used to see Sarah every week here. So moving on to our general updates, Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas is sponsoring an opportunity for family child care providers to attend a monthly meeting called The Den to discuss business topics. On July 14th in the evening from 7 to 8 p.m., the program titled Dear Fairy Godmother will take place to discuss how to make your business policies work for you. I just mentioned how family child care providers have to juggle many balls in the air each day. So much of their time is spent caring for the children, but there is also the business side of their work that demands much of their attention as well. So they will be able to participate in a facilitated discussion with their peers, and it will be an opportunity for them to gain more knowledge and possible takeaways to help with this important part of what they do. Hunter and Scouts Poison Patrol is a free program that is sponsored by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment and the University of Kansas Health System. You can go to this link provided to access educational materials that can be used to teach about lead poisoning prevention to your students, as well as provide information to parents. These materials include a cute video using puppets, which is short but fun. I watched it and I would highly recommend that you take a look at this and that you will find it helpful to use in your work. We continue to make you aware of the Parent Leadership Conference. That's a virtual opportunity starting July 1st. Participants' options can watch recorded sessions, visit vendor booths, and also learn and network with other parents. There's some live evening sessions that will be held on July 27th through 29th with keynote speakers and a parent cafe. And the fun part is participants who attend all three of these live sessions will receive incentives. So you can use the link provided here to register and see more conference details. And this event has been very well attended in the past. This year it is virtual and it sounds like a lot of fun. So again, it will begin in a couple of weeks on July 1st. So please register now. There are AQ3 and SE2 trainings available. The AQ3 is happening on June 22nd from 5 to 8 p.m. And this training is designed for any professional who has contact with children younger than 66 months of age. And the goal of the AQ3 is to help identify developmental delays early. So that will allow children and families to receive services right away and find strategies to minimize those delays and maximize potential. The AQ SE2 is designed for anybody who has contact with children younger than 72 months of age. And the training is to identify social or emotional difficulties early, again, so that those children and families can begin receiving services. A professional development opportunity for kindergarten readiness, sponsored by the Kansas Masonic Literacy Center and the Teachers College at Emporia State University, is being offered. And this is a professional learning series for caregivers for birth through 5. And the great thing about this is that it offers 18 hours approved by KDHE, and also $150 stipends are available to participants. And so you can go to this email address listed here for more information. We always like to share the Our Tomorrows updates that are available to us. And it is important to know that our Tomorrows team is looking to partner with organizations needing better representation in the early childhood systems. And so working with these organizations will allow them to hear stories from the unheard voices, some of which have been identified and are listed here. Hearing those unheard voices will allow the Our Tomorrows team to share these stories collected to the agencies, organizations, and individuals involved in making important decisions that impact the early childhood system in Kansas. And they also announced that there's 13 new PDG subgrantees awarded year 2, and that the staff is getting ready to make calls for the new kindergarten readiness subgrantees. And now we are ready for today's presentation again. It is Year 1 Preschool Development Grant and Subgrant Recap by Megan Kluth and Sarah Gardner. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Debbie. Can you guys see my screen okay? I know it looks very similar to the one that was just up. We did a quick swap here. So as Debbie mentioned, Megan and I are from the Center for Public Partnerships and Research, and in our role, we wear several different hats across the early childhood system, but today we're talking to you as the leads of the coordination team around the Preschool Development Grant. So we're going to walk you through, believe it or not, it's been 1 year, over 1 year now since we were awarded funding. I don't know where last year went, but that's what my calendar tells me. And so we're going to pause and reflect on really the wonderful things that happened over the course of year 1, give you guys some insights that maybe we haven't shared along the way, and also talk to you about some next steps, what's coming up in year 2, and ways that you can continue to stay connected to the effort. I know there's a lot going on, but we'll dive right in. And many of you are familiar with Sarah O'Keefe, our graphic recorder. So we employed her to help us capture our year 1 in review. And so we're going to show a few of these graphic recordings on the slides, and we'll also post all of this on the Children's Cabinet website. And I'm going to show you where that is going to be as we get going. So just a reminder, what is the Preschool Development Grant? We did a large planning effort, a planning grant in 2019. Over 6,000 Kansans informed that effort, where we developed our comprehensive needs assessment and then our All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan. All of that work was part of our planning grant. We were then awarded a renewal grant, a 3-year renewal grant in April of 2020. You'll see the $8.9 million figure here on your screen. That's a 1-year amount. So we will be getting that in year 2 and in year 3. So it's a pretty significant influx of dollars, really aimed at strengthening our early childhood system. The great thing about these 2 grants being connected is that now we have this really visionary and inspirational plan that can help guide all of our efforts. And it's really serendipitous that we have this funding and this opportunity to write the plan when we did, because it also helps us as we think about navigating the influx of relief dollars that are also coming in. How do we prioritize where we spend our resources and where we spend our time? And that strategic plan, informed by all of you, is a really fantastic guiding document. And of course, we couldn't go through a year one in review without mentioning the pandemic and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Brene Brown says not to silver line things, but I'm going to anyways, at the risk of angering the gods of inspirational and motivational speaking. But the silver lining for us is that we did have this massive collaboration effort. We built a system of champions, a system of stakeholders who play different roles, who actually can help us respond much more quickly to the challenges of COVID-19. So again, we wouldn't wish the pandemic on anyone, but having our system strengthened over the course of the initial PDG has positioned us to help respond better. So our preschool development grant is broken up into 6 different activities. They are dictated to us by our federal funders. We don't get to select those activities or the activity categories. We get to select the items underneath it. So I'm going to run through each of our 6 activities and talk to you a little bit about what's been happening inside of those activities. The first one is our grant activity 1 is formally a needs assessment. And so what this means is that each year we will do a comprehensive update of our big 2019 needs assessment document. I will say, if you don't have a copy of that 2019 needs assessment and you want one, drop your name and email address in the chat and we will be sure to connect with you. We have copies. We have funding to print copies and get those to everyone. You can also find the electronic version, the PDF, on the Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund website. But this, for our PDG year 1, it was really about what's new, what's different, and what can we highlight in an updated needs assessment. And so, as you might imagine, much of this will focus on the impact of COVID-19. So we have about a 30-page update to the needs assessment, which looked at how did COVID-19 impact our workforce? How did it impact our children and families? How did it impact our system? And then what is lessons learned from year 1 of implementing our strategic plan as well? We were fortunate that other elements within our mixed delivery system were also undergoing parallel needs assessments. So in our update for year 1, you will see lots of references to the Title V needs assessment, which supports our maternal and child health work across Kansas. So there's a lot of really wonderful data around the providers and the families who are impacted by Title V services. And of course, no surprise, a big issue is navigating the emergency needs that COVID presented with sustainability grants, making sure there is PPE, with how do we invest in the system long term. So you will see the updated needs assessment by the end of June. We'll be sure to give that copy to Debbie to reference on the upcoming webinars, and we'll also make it available out of the weekly email that comes out. Activity 2 is our strategic plan and systems alignment. And this makes sure that we use our preschool development grant as a funding source to implement our strategic plan. So ideally, your PDG, as it's known, is there to help bolster and add velocity to your efforts to implement your strategic plan. So you can see the image that Sarah captured here is about everybody rowing in the same direction, that our parts are connected, and that the alignment of our funding, the alignment of our services, the alignment of our messaging, all of that impacts how families and providers experience our early childhood system. That alignment is called out quite heavily in our strategic plan. And it's really critical for us to continue focusing on, despite all of the challenges of COVID-19, to continue focusing on implementing that strategic plan. So the work involved here is work you participate in. It's participating in governance. It's adding your voice to stakeholder conversations. It's making sure that everyone understands the shared vision and shared direction that we are aiming towards. So those are the 2 categories that are probably, that don't involve a ton of activity. We start to get into the meat here in activity 3, which is about maximizing parent and family knowledge. So I want to call out a few things that have been really big bright spots for us The first is the Family Advisory Council, which is coordinated by the team at KDHE's Maternal Child Health and Heather Smith. They have expanded their Family Advisory Council. They have new working groups inside that Family Advisory Council. And just, Megan, I'm thinking it was 2 weeks ago, perhaps, the Family Leadership Team, which is a collection of state agency folks who support family engagement and family leaders, have come together to create a new team to help ensure that family voices are at every table where key decisions are being made. So it's really exciting to see a formal structure that engages and provides open invitations for families to lend their voice. Debbie mentioned your ASQ screening trainings a little bit earlier in the presentation, and that is a direct result of the investment that Kansas has made in a statewide ASQ enterprise system, which is basically us saying we are going to, our effort to screen as many children as possible to make sure that they are on the right track in terms of their development, their emotional and social emotional development, and that they are connected to the resources. So it's not just knowing where families and children stand, but what supports do they need and how do we make sure that we connect them to those resources. ASQ screenings are best practice, and it's a really easy tool to, or really easy way for us to make sure that families and children are getting the supports that they need. You've also heard about 1-800-CHILDREN and the great work that the team at KCSL does to make sure that resource is a warm, friendly voice on the other line for your 2 a.m. calls as well as your 2 p.m. calls. It's a great resource for families. It's also good for you as a provider or a service provider. Know that that's available. If you have families that are struggling or just have a quick question and you feel overwhelmed and not able to support them, and we know that you guys wear many hats, direct them to the 1-800-CHILDREN helpline. It's a really valuable resource and it does a lot. It goes out of its way really to do a lot to support families with a variety of questions, not just about how to care for their children, but also what resources might they need and what connections might they need. We also have a pediatric pilot that is being supported by the team at KDHE. So we have care coordination going on with pediatrician offices across the state, as well as care coordination as we help children transition from Part C to Part B services, our Bridges program. So a lot of ways to minimize the navigation that families have to do on their own. That was one of our key findings in our needs assessment, is that families often feel like they have to make 10 or 12 phone calls before they get a resource, or they're on their own and they don't know where to turn. And part of our emphasis in PDG is to support a no wrong door approach. And that means making sure that you as a provider have what you need to support that as well. Activity 4 is all about our workforce. It's sharing best practices and our early childhood care and education workforce. Obviously, with the pressures of COVID, it has been very, very difficult for providers in our workforce to think about long term. They have had to they have been on the front lines as essential workers in supporting families and children through the crisis that we've been in. We know that our workforce is underfunded, and we know that there is a very, very high cost to provide quality care, whether that's childcare or home visiting services or training services or other parent engagement services. So we are really working now to identify what are some different approaches that we might take. In our quality subgrants, we actually funded a few different organizations who are trying things around retention bonuses, insurance stipends, different ways that we can support the workforce to show, if we can't, through PDG, we really aren't able to raise wages in the long term, but we can provide some short-term relief through PDG, and we've been doing that through our subgrants. We also supported through PDG, we had a kindergarten transition summit, and you heard a lot about that last fall, and Peggy Kelly and the Head Start team did a wonderful job of supporting that summit, as well as creating the kindergarten transitions toolkit that the panel recommended and approved. So some really good work happening there around supporting our workforce, helping kids transition in that really critical time of care. And then the really, really big effort that's going on right now is developing our workforce registry. So Kansas is one of a handful of states that doesn't have an existing registry for our workforce. And what this is an online repository of professional information. So professionals can access the registry, put in some information, and identify where they might be on the career pathway, what career opportunities that they might have. How do they know what trainings are available to them, what trainings they need to have? So it's really, the registry is intended to be a resource for our professionals. It also helps us from the system side know what professionals need. It's a place where we can capture some data around our workforce to understand where are some of those pinch points and pain points that we might be able to address. So that work is happening right now. There is a professional development implementation team in place that is looking big picture at career pathways. What does that look like in Kansas? We also have the Workforce Development Advisory Group that Linda Logan and her team at Casito help support through their partnership with DCF. They are really diving deep into core competencies. What is the core competencies that we need here in Kansas? What's the Kansas approach? They're also diving into some diversity, equity, and inclusion work and making sure that we are supporting providers as they navigate providing more inclusive services for the children that they serve. So there's different work happening, all helping to inform what will become a workforce registry build. And we are in the very early stages of working through the mechanics of that process, including drafting a request for proposals that we will send out to attract a vendor, including identifying how we will get stakeholder feedback on registry elements. And so we anticipate that it will be probably sometime next spring when the registry build itself starts happening. So it is a slow process. But that's so that we can get it right and that we can leverage all the voices that are needed to inform the registry. Grant activity 5 is improving overall quality and service integration. And really what we did here in Kansas is that activity 5 is all about the work happening on the ground in communities. And so we are going to issue about $3 million, between $2.5 and $3 million, depending on the year, to our communities and our providers out in Kansas doing the great work, serving children and families through rural access to childcare for different populations who traditionally have a difficult time thinking about where are their deserts across the state. We also funded some work related to connecting families to services in their community, as well as kindergarten readiness. And Megan's going to talk a little bit more about that. But this is a really important thing for us to invest in some new ideas and some key approaches, and then have really close collaboration with those grantees to make sure we can learn what is working. We know that where you live in Kansas dictates how you interface with the early childhood system. And so it was really critical for us to allow communities and organizations to explore different approaches and different tactics and have us learn from what works there on the ground. The other part of this that we'll highlight is the launch of the Kansas Common App. I know many of you have used that to access supports. I think we've had over 1,000 applications that have been submitted through the Kansas Common App, including through funding with our ESSER funds, which is our relief funding through the the Department of Education. Our Kansas Preschool pilot funds. We also had our Kansas Parents as Teachers renewals went through the Common App, as well as our quality subgrants and ECBG supports out of the cabinet. We are exploring what is working out of the Common App, what is not working out of the Common App, what do users need. So if you participated in the Common App at all as a applicant or a user, you can expect that we will be reaching out to you in the next few months to get more information about your experience, so we can see where we need to make some tweaks and adjustments to make sure it's doing what it's intended to do, which is to reduce the burden on communities and organizations. And then grant activity 6, this is the data piece, monitoring, evaluation, and data use. We have a pretty significant evaluation that we have to do for our federal funding partners. which is they dictate to us the categories that we have to evaluate. Many of our state agency partners received a phone call from Chris Tilden from our team, who really led that evaluation. It's very dense. It's very rich, though. It has a lot of really good information about how we are implementing programs across our mixed delivery system, where we might have gaps, and where we could make some improvements, and what's working versus what's not working. We also are looking at the elements in our strategic plan. Where are we at with the different tactics? And are we doing what we said we were going to do? And if not, why? And if yes, how is it going? And then the big thing that is happening is the creation of an early childhood integrated data system. Like the registry, Kansas is one of a handful of states that doesn't have a formal ECIDS, which is what the acronym for Early Childhood Integrated Data System. We are working towards building a Kansas-specific solution for integrated data across early childhood, with the singular goal of identifying what set of programs, what combination of services are really producing the greatest impact for children. How can we make sure we have third grade reading levels improved? How can we make sure that kids are entering kindergarten ready to learn and in the best position possible? How can we make sure that our services on our child welfare side are dovetailed with our early childhood services, so that no matter where you are getting services, you are you're in that birth to 5 or birth to 8 range, that you are getting high quality early learning experiences and environments. So if you follow the Children's Cabinet, you will have heard that they are undergoing a pilot data trust agreement. So right now we are looking at some data from the Department for Children and Families and some data from the Children's Cabinet Early Childhood Block Grant fundees or funded programs, and seeing where there is some connection, and using those two data points together to tell us the story of what is working well. And that will be the approach that we take for our ECIDS, is to say, what are some use cases that we have across the system, rather than thinking that we're going to build something brand new. We are going to leverage what we have in the state and really just create a system where those data points can talk to each other a little bit more efficiently and effectively. So that work is also happening right now. I have been talking a lot. I just want a quick check of the chat here. So those are the 6 activities. And now I'm going to turn it over to Megan and have her dive more into the subgrants and what's going on with that, as it's you guys doing the great work. Megan?
Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned, the quality subgrants were a major activity in year 1 and will be a major activity throughout the PDG. We awarded funding in fall of 2020, and this was the first program to utilize the Kansas Common App. So it's obviously grown tremendously since then. In the fall, we had about 148 applications submitted, so it was a very competitive process. And then we did a second round for our kindergarten readiness opportunity this spring, which we just wrapped up those awards, and those are kind of unique because they're 12-month grants. Next slide, please. Thanks. So 62 grantees were funded in year 2. Most of these will continue their work throughout PDG and our multi-year projects. Sarah talked a little bit about the categories, but these were awarded across childcare access, rural childcare, connecting families, kindergarten readiness, and improving quality. So we had a pretty diverse set of projects, and I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the themes, but to add to what Sarah said earlier, this is really looking at what people have done and want to test locally. And so it provides a great opportunity not only to see what works in different communities based on their needs, but also we've been very fortunate to be able to learn alongside them, and we'll continue doing that throughout PDG and really seeing, what are the lessons learned, what's going well, what might be scaled across the state. And so there's quite a few different approaches of what people have felt like will meet their community need. That's been really exciting to follow. Many of you have probably heard some about these subgrants through the early childhood stakeholders meeting. They've been highlighted recently and will continue to be highlighted. So stay tuned and stay engaged with these projects, because they had a pretty short year 1. It was about a 5-month year 1. And so I think the year 2 is going to be there's a lot of momentum for them to be working from, and I know there will be some exciting updates for us to continue to share over the coming months. And then again, we had 13 new projects funded in year 2, which was specific to kindergarten readiness, which is really focused on bringing communities together to collaborate around successful kindergarten transitions. So this map, which is available on this link on the Children's Cabinet website, shows where the year 1 grants are. This does not have the new kindergarten readiness grants plugged in yet, but it will be updated soon. And if you're interested, you can go to this link and actually click through on each pen and learn a little bit more about each grantee, the counties they're serving, kind of the scope of what they're doing with their project. And I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, connecting with projects that you're interested in, whether that's close to you geographically, or maybe they're doing similar work. I think we've already seen some wonderful collaborations among the subgrantees and with many of the partners that we see here today, and certainly hope to continue to see that grow as their projects develop. But there are a lot of really interesting and innovative and exciting projects going on. So definitely it's worth taking a few minutes to kind of dive into some of their great work. So we can't tell you about all 62 projects today. We'd be here. We could easily spend a week, I think, going through the different nuances of the projects, but we did see some common themes in terms of what was funded through these grants. And I think a lot of these are really reflect what we learned in the needs assessment and are in the strategic plan as well. And many of them have a localized twist. So one of the common themes was really looking at how do we increase capacity and access and quality for childcare services. So we have several childcare providers that are expanding to non-traditional hours or bringing on more staff or adjusting kind of their staffing to ensure that there's increased access for families. Providing culturally responsive materials. Some of you may have heard in the recent stakeholders meeting, there's a focus on subgrantees that are really working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so quite a few have elements of bringing in different materials, whether that's toys or books or even the foods that they're eating and the conversations they're having in their program, and as well as how they're supporting their staff. And then also looking at how to increase accessibility for children with special healthcare needs and other populations, and just responding to the needs of their community. Sarah mentioned the Connecting Families for Services subgrant category, and there are quite a few projects that are bringing collaborations together, bringing even neighborhoods or towns together to develop partnerships or strengthen partnerships. There are some online hubs being developed of early childhood resources in different communities and different tools, so that families as well as professionals feel a little bit more connected and a little bit easier to navigate the different resources that people need, as well as quite a few efforts around just increasing, I think, awareness among partners, but also just general awareness about the services and resources available in the community and getting a sense of what needs are still out there. And then last, but certainly not least, one of the major themes throughout the subgrants is workforce. And so not surprisingly, and I think there are quite a few very unique local approaches to how to respond to workforce challenges, which of course have been exacerbated by the pandemic. So looking at things like building new career pathways, partnering with community colleges and other community partners to look at how do we bring more people into the field, as well as how do we retain people in the field through one-time stipends, the insurance subsidies that Sarah mentioned, and other ways to try to address turnover, as well as provide professional development opportunities, both for their own staff, but also across partners in their communities. So again, this is a teeny tiny snapshot of what is being the great work that's being done through these subgrants. I would recommend either tuning into some of our other webinars and meetings where we're highlighting some of these and you actually get to hear from the grantees themselves. We'll continue to do that. But you can also always explore that map, which will be soon updated for year 2, so you can see how these projects are progressing.
Thanks, Megan, for sharing that. So what's next? As I mentioned, we're into year 2. So as we go, we'll build upon the successes. As Megan mentioned, we have the subgrants going into a full year of implementing their programs, and we are constantly trying to learn from what is working well for them and sharing back that information with all of you. Continuing to test new approaches and connect solutions to system for scaling. What does that mean? It just means that we are always on the lookout for new approaches and new ways to serve children and families. A great example of this is there is a resource called Adaptive Technical Assistance. I think its name is going to be changing soon, but if you've heard us reference it, Adaptive TA, Danielle Brower from the CPPR team helps lead that. I know she was on a previous webinar talking about self-care as well. But Danielle and her team can be a resource for communities who have any variety of challenges they're looking to overcome. Maybe they want help in collaboration. Maybe they want help writing a grant. Maybe they want help just understanding the scope of the challenge related to childcare in their community. Maybe they've seen their community, recognized as a childcare desert, and they want to help solve that challenge locally and don't know where to start. This adaptive technical assistance is a great resource. And then behind that, we can also support with small pockets of funding, potentially new ways to test ideas for things that you are doing to solve those local solutions. As I mentioned at the outset, coordinating with the relief funding that is coming down to the state, both through state agencies and direct federal funding streams, as well as dollars coming to the state at large. That work is happening fast and furious to try to make sure that we are leveraging the right funding source for the right service, because funding coming from our federal partners always has a little bit of strings attached, and we always want to make sure that we are using the right funding for the right purpose. So that coordination is really, really critical. Recognize and address impacts of COVID-19 on the workforce and our families. That is number one. That is the purpose of the relief funding in a lot of ways. And we want to help support that by backfilling whatever we need to on the preschool development side. So the PDG year 2, all of what we just shared today will be coming soon in narrative form on the Children's Cabinet website. So if you go to the just allinforkansaskids.org URL, or if you navigate to the All In for Kansas Kids section on the Children's Cabinet website, you will see, or you will begin to see information related to a PDG year 1 recap and look ahead for PDG year 2. Couple other activities I want to highlight, one of which I think will be really interesting to a lot of you. One is long-term sustainability planning. So we are thinking about all of these great projects and programs and infrastructure pieces that we're putting in place that we know our system needs. How are we going to sustain those things long-term as we go beyond our preschool development grant funding in 2023? It seems like a long ways away, but it'll be here before we know it. And so we are undergoing some pretty targeted sustainability planning efforts. And I'm sure we'll involve partners all along the way as we do that. The thing that you guys might be interested in is we have recently completed an activity audit of our strategic plan. If you don't have one of these and you want a physical copy, again, put your name and email address in the chat. It's not that long of a document. It's 50 some odd pages. And it has marching orders, essentially. It has tactics in it for what we all can do to help move forward our state's vision that every child thrives for early childhood. So it's also an electronic version on the Cabinet website. We went through and we looked at every tactic and we said who was doing what and where are they at in their progress. And this kind of came up, I got to give Amy Gottschammer some credit for this idea related to, we attended a workforce development advisory group meeting and we were talking about the great work happening with the workforce registry. And, she just noted like, who is doing what around the different things in the system. And yes, everything is moving so fast and so furious. And we want to make sure that everybody is clued in to all of the different great work happening across the system. So we went through and looked at all of the tactics in the plan, and we're going to put out, it's probably just going to be a simple spreadsheet that shows what's the tactic and who do we know is working on it, so that if you're highlighted there, if you're working on core competencies, know that that's also happening over here in the Workforce Development Advisory Group. If you are doing stipends as part of your PDG quality subgrant. Know that it's happening over here as well. So it's a really important thing for our system to know what each other is doing across so that we can learn and that we can collaborate and coordinate. So we're going to be putting out that information both as a spreadsheet for the connections, so you can help make those connections and help us where we might have gaps in our knowledge, and also just show some progress and some highlights. We all need to know the good work that's happening and the bright spots. So we're going to showcase some of that on the cabinet website as well. Okay, so we've shared a lot of information about what's going on with the preschool development grant and the quality subgrants. Obviously, we're available to help answer any questions here on the rest of the webinar. But we really appreciate your attention and time and your engagement in this work. It only happens because you're involved and you're engaged, and you ask for things that helps us know where to spend time and where to spend effort when it comes to the coordination side of things. So thank you guys so much for allowing us to come and share.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Megan. Appreciate a lot of information, but there's also a lot going on in our early childhood system. And I'm sure many of you that are listening in today have been involved in bits and pieces of a lot of that work, and there's more good things to come. So Sarah and Megan help keep us on track every day. So wrapping up our meeting, we always just remind you of meetings that are coming up. The recommendations panel is meeting this Friday morning from 9 to 11:30. And so you can find that on the cabinet's website and watch it live on YouTube. And our next biweekly webinar is in 2 weeks on June 30th at noon. We always appreciate you joining us and hopefully learning new information. And our cabinet and stakeholder group meeting is scheduled virtually in August on the 6th, which is a Friday. Cabinet meeting in the morning, stakeholder group meeting in the afternoon. And so we always welcome you to go to the Children's Cabinet website also and share feedback that you might have, any ideas or thoughts that can help guide us along our way. And so that wraps up our meeting today. I want to always end it with some a saying or a quote or something, a poem. And today I'm going to focus on our family childcare system and the celebrating that it's Family Childcare Week. And so it's your home and their school. It's your furniture and their learning space. It's your backyard and their exploration area. And the children that you care for are not just your students, they are part of your extended family. And that applies to the parents as well. So this is the beauty of family childcare. And so again, we thank all of you for your work. We thank everyone for joining us and sharing your noon hour with us every other Wednesday. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your day.